right. Well, welcome everyone. Please keep filing in virtually. We'd love to have you. Welcome to another very special edition of Book Passage, Authors and Conversations with Authors. We love this. Thank you so much for supporting not only this event, but supporting Book Passage with all our virtual events, as well as, drum roll, our in-person events that have kind of gotten started this month. We're so excited about that. And we want you to know you can look up on our website for all the upcoming events and make sure to find out which ones are in person and which ones are virtual. But thank you so much for your support of everything we do. And I've got to say, we're really looking forward to this. We have a lot of unique special events, as you well know, but we don't do a whole lot of book events that are related to the food industry. And especially since, 2020, we haven't had the opportunity. So I'm really excited about tonight's event featuring Frances Moore Lappé. And to get things started, I'd love to have us all welcome her daughter, Anna Lappe, who's not only her daughter, but she is co-founder, along with Frances, of the nonprofit Small Planet Fund, which channels resources to democratic social movements worldwide. With that, I'm going to pass it on to Anna.
Thank you so much, Paula. It's a real pleasure to be here, and we are just so delighted to have Book Passage hosting us. And I really excited for this special conversation, the first of two launches of the 50th anniversary of Diet for a Small Planet. We are so sad not to be in person altogether, but this is the closest we can get, the next best thing. As Paula said, I am Anna Lappe. I am the daughter of author Frances Moore Lappé, and it is my sheer pleasure to introduce to you this evening my mother and Bryant Terry, who is joining with us to celebrate this moment and lead the conversation tonight. It was one of the great joys of my life to help my mother on this new special edition of Diet for a Small Planet, and to know that through this new book, we will reach a whole new generation of readers with a message that has never felt more urgent. I want to give a special thank you to Bryant for joining us this evening, and to everyone who helped make the book possible and make this launch possible, including Book Passage. I also want to thank our recipe developer and nutritionist, Wendy Lopez of Food Heaven Made Easy, who helped refresh the recipes, to all the chefs who contributed to this edition, including Bryant, to the whole team at Random House, to Amy Mazzara for the illustrations, to Paige Green for the beautiful cover photography, to all the Diet for a Small Planet fans who've been so supportive over the years, and to all of you who are tuning in this evening to celebrate with us. So by way of a little bit of background for those of you who might not know, Frances Moore Lappé, otherwise known as Frankie, known to some as Grammy. She is the author or co-author of 20 books about hunger, democracy, the environment, beginning with her 3.5 million copy bestseller, Diet for a Small Planet. And she is the co-founder of 3 national organizations, including Food First and the Small Planet Institute, and has been awarded 19 honorary degrees, soon to be 20, and has been commended as a visionary thinker. One of my very favorite quotes about my mother is from Howard Zinn, the author of A People's History of the United States. And he said, "A small number of people in every generation are forerunners in thought, action, and spirit, who swerve past the barriers of greed and power to hold a torch high for the rest of us." Lappé is one of those. Bryant Terry is a James Beard Award-winning chef, an educator, and an NAACP Image Award winner, and the author of many great books. When Paula comes back on, you might spy one of them on her bookshelf, Afro-Vegan. He's also written Vegetable Kingdom. I recommend every single one of Bryant's books. He is deeply respected for his activism and efforts to create a healthy, equitable, and sustainable food system, and is currently the chef in residence at the Museum of the African Diaspora in San Francisco, where he creates amazing programming that celebrates the intersections of food, farming, health, activism, art, culture, and the African diaspora. His work has been featured in the New York Times, the Washington Post, All Things Considered, and his latest book, out soon, is Black Food. Bryant is also a dear friend, so it's particularly meaningful to have him here with us tonight. So with that, I am delighted to turn it over to Bryant and my mother for a conversation. Then we'll turn it back to Paula from Book Passage, who will moderate your questions. So please use the space on your screen. If you have questions or comments or thoughts, drop them in at any point, and Paula will come back on toward the end of our time together to share those questions with Frances. So take it away, Bryant.
All right. Thank you so much for that kind introduction, Anna. I am just so excited to be here in celebration of this important book. And I want to welcome everyone and let you all know that it's such an honor and a privilege to be in conversation with one of our most important thinkers, writers, activists, and encouragers.
There you go.
The publication of this updated version of Diet for a Small Planet could not be more timely during this tumultuous historical moment. First of all, I'd like to say congratulations on this momentous occasion, Frankie. And it's been so exciting reading a lot of the articles and seeing social media abuzz with excitement for this publication of this new book. So I just want to start by asking you, how do you feel on the eve of the publication of the 50th anniversary of Diet for a Small Planet? Just personally, what's happening for you right now?
Well, thank you, Bryant. Thank you. The overwhelming emotion is gratitude. I made it 50 years. And look at this. I have two amazing children doing such important work. And I feel so blessed, Bryant. And I've known you for quite a long time, too. And that's a great blessing. So I'm just filled with gratitude that we're all working together. I feel like we're making, we're understanding more. We're pushing ourselves into new areas, taking risks more. We're seeing the unity of our various movements. I want to really underscore that tonight. Mm-hmm. So I really am just filled with gratitude and a sense of possibility, which is one of the theme songs of my life. And I can get back to that.
Oh, thank you so much. This book has pushed millions of people, including me, to consider how a sustainable diet could move us more towards a more sustainable environment, better public health, stronger local and regional economies, and social justice for historically marginalized communities. And I just, on a personal note, before we dive into the conversation, Frankie, I want to tell you something. And I sent you an article because I've been talking about you a lot lately. Being in this new phase of my career as a publisher now, I think it's important that I recognize the people upon whose shoulders I stand, the mentors, the people who have inspired me. And, just in terms of the way in which my work has been, the way in which I've approached writing books has been so deeply inspired by you. Just, the structure, thinking about like Diet for a Small Planet, where you're combining these, heady intellectual ideas and hard research with practical tips and tools and know-how. And obviously the recipes. And that's pretty much been a formula. Anna and I use that formula for Grub, and it's been a formula that I've pretty much adopted for all my projects. But what I want to tell you and what I've been talking about lately is that the work that I do as a publisher now, I always say that it formalizes the work that I've always done in terms of mentoring, in terms of supporting budding authors. And it was all because of you. Like, I can't even tell you that the time that we spent together, the tour that we did, the early moments, just seeing your professionalism, seeing your dedication to constantly, improve your craft, take it to the next level, the amount of preparation that you always bring to the work. Even if it's just an interview, I would ask Anna, why is your mom in there studying? She's like, this is how she prepares for interviews. And so I just, on a personal level, wanted to just convey the immense gratitude that I have for the impact that you've had on my work. So I had to get that out of the way. All right.
Thank you so much, Bryant.
Yeah. So I guess the first question I'd like to get at, because I think a lot of people, when they imagine Diet for a Small Planet, they connect it with Northern California and the time that, you were spending at Cal as a graduate student when you were this was in the embryonic phase. But I know that the ideas, the questions that you were grappling with in the book, they actually predate the time in Northern California at Cal. And it goes back to a period where you were a social worker in Philadelphia. And I'm hoping you could talk a little bit about the work you were doing and what was kind of emerging in the questions and things that were coming up for you during that period.
Thank you, Bryant. Also, on this theme of gratitude, before I begin there, I just want to express my gratitude for my daughter that she did so much to make this book possible in so many ways. And so I want that out there because I could not have done it without you, Anna. So thank you. Thank you. That was a very special time. And I feel so grateful, the theme tonight, that I was coming into adulthood during a sense of social possibility. You can make many criticisms, but the civil rights movement was on fire, and the Great Society, the idea of a war on poverty, we're going to take on poverty. And I was called by that. I wanted to be part of that war on poverty. So I was assigned to go door to door in a very poor neighborhood of Philadelphia. And by the way, for all you young people, the maxim of the war on poverty, it was called maximum feasible participation. And for me now, I call that living democracy. So my job was to go out and get more and more people involved. And in my case, it was very poor women who were victimized by slumlords. And the city was trying to enable them to help buy their own homes. And I said, yes, that's for me. And I want to be part of that. So I helped with the welfare rights organization. But then, as I tell in the chapter that I wrote, that the woman I worked most closely with died of a heart attack in her early 40s. And I was convinced that Lily died of poverty, just poverty. You don't die of a heart attack in your 40s unless you have an incredible stress. So I got out to California then because my children's father, my husband, was a postdoc there. And I started again in studying community organizing, but I thought, I've got to stop. I've got to stop doing anything to save the world until I understand what caused Lily's death. How do I get at the roots of that deprivation, that injustice, that racism? And so I paused, and that was the best decision I ever made. I stopped trying to do, and I just tried to listen to myself and use my common sense. And I said, okay, food, everybody's got to eat, right? And it's quantifiable how much people need. If I could understand the roots of hunger, that would unlock the mysteries of economics and politics. And then I'd know how to move forward in my life. And that was where it began, because we were bombarded at that time by the idea that, well, hunger is inevitable because we're running out of food. And a book called The Population Bomb had kind of exploded, and people were saying, I can't have children because we've run out, there's not enough. And so I was really, is that true? Is that true? Is that why there's hunger? And I could go on, but I want to have a conversation, Brian, not give a talk. So that was the great moment that I came out, just to summarize, out of this time of a sense of possibility where we could get at the roots of poverty. And I was then motivated to go deeper. And that's what led then to a one-page handout that became a book.
Mm-hmm. I'm wondering, at what point did you start thinking about merging ideas with the kind of like nuts and bolts action steps and tools that people can take in their own lives, but then the recipes, bringing those in? Was that something that you had been thinking about initially when you were kind of moving into this work, or did that come a little later?
No, I have a confession to make tonight. The recipes were the idea of Betty Valentine, who is one of the founders of paperback publishing in America. And she was a delight. I said, Betty, why are you taking a chance on me? I haven't written anything. And she said, well, it's your ideas. She said, if you can't write it, I can do that. So I figure if somebody giving me that opportunity, I should listen to this person. She said, go for recipes. So I said, yes. And so I called on my friends, and I said, please, please, please donate your recipes. And I had recipes coming in all over the country. And then I had to make them and tweak them, because then I was following this now We now know the science is a lot easier, how to eat plant foods and be healthy, but then it was a little more complicated. So I created those recipes, and that was the beginning then of combining. But I really think that my first instinct about food was that because it's so personal and we do it every day, multiple times a day, and we have to make that choice, a really conscious choice every time, that if we could feel that was aligned with the world we want, that would be so overall empowering. And it would be, I always used to say, like a string around my finger, every day reminding me to the rest of the world and to the earth and to other people being able to eat. So it seemed really like a cool idea to go as far as the recipes, but I have to give Betty Valentine the credit for actually pushing me to do it.
Thank you, Betty. Well, I mean, obviously the book, a lot of people would argue that you helped popularize vegetarianism. You sparked the food revolution in many ways. And I'm wondering if, what your thoughts are on just seeing this moment that we're in, where we witness this exponential rise in people who are moving more towards, I guess I should say, plant-centered diets, whether vegetarian or veganism.
Mm-hmm.
And people are thinking about the many complicated and the diverse reasons why that makes sense outside of just health, but thinking about the environmental impact, thinking about the economic reasons why one might choose this. And one thing that I've been excited about lately is the fact that African Americans, who, as you know, have some of the highest rates of preventable diet-related illnesses, heart disease, type 2 diabetes, hypertension, are now the fastest growing population of vegans in the US. And so I'm just wondering, how does that feel, just seeing, us kind of have this tipping point where it's not seen as kind of a hippie French diet, but people are understanding the way in which it really needs to be central to the way that we're approaching eating in this country.
Yeah, no, I think all that is fabulous. I remember back when I wrote the book, the initial response was, "Oh, thank you, Frankie, because now my parents don't think I'm going to starve to death." You've solved an argument in our family. And think about going from that to what you're suggesting. And I think what is so radically changed is now we know that what was a good choice back then is now an absolute no contest necessity, because yes, we could argue then, certainly, it's so vastly inefficient. I'll just give you one number, everybody out there, if you don't know this, that over 80% of our agricultural land is devoted to feeding livestock, but they give us back only 18% of our calories. So, whoa, that's really, I call that a protein factory in reverse. That is really wasteful. So we have sort of that idea of how incredibly wasteful it is, how cruel it can be for those, who are really in touch with the suffering of animals. But what we know now is just vastly more, that the harm from just the deforestation, take one factor, in, for example, the Amazon, so much of that felling is because of cattle and grazing and feed. But also that we know now that 37% of greenhouse gas emissions are linked to the entire food system. And so, and the estimate that I find so striking is that if cows were a country, that they would be the third largest greenhouse gas emitter. And so it's really taken on a whole new level of depth of that climate change factor, and then of course the decimation of species that are related to this corporate chemical agriculture that we are driving toward and have taken so far. So is that, that to me, I'm really curious though, Brian, what do you think I'm missing there in the big shifts?
I don't think you're missing anything, but you're talking about change, and I guess when I think about where you were 50 years ago and the kind of trajectory that we've been on, I'm wondering, what are significant changes today regarding the book's themes of climate and democracy? How have you thought about those over the your body of work that brought you to this point?
Yeah, well, I want to add one more thing to the last question and then take that one, because I didn't bring out what I want to, and I'm sure you want to bring out tonight, that we have effectively turned food into a health hazard that we have so degraded. 60% of our calories are coming from processed food that is not giving us nutrition. It's giving us calories more than we need. So I think we're the first species that has turned its food supply into a health hazard. It's not smart for this bright species. So that I really want to focus on tonight. I want to make sure people understand how dangerous it is. And I also want to, in terms of my journey, you probably know, Brian, that very early on, I've said hunger is not caused by scarcity of food, it's caused by scarcity of democracy, that a scarcity of power that people don't have over their own lives to access healthy food. And of course, that is still true today. Today, 1 in 3 people on our planet do not have access to an adequate diet. 1 in 3. So I then have to move, and I've been, walking on 2 feet all this time of one stride on the food and farming that takes us into these very deep questions, and also so personal questions about our daily choices in the earth, and also my commitment to what I call living democracy that is truly accountable to us. And I just want to add that what happened right after Diet for a Small Planet was published in 1971, right at that time, the Chamber of Commerce was terrified because of all the progress that we, the people, had made in the 60s. And they set a corporate lawyer on task of a blueprint writing to how do we reestablish corporate power. And then they have succeeded to a large extent in infusing incredible amount of lobbying power and funding power for elected officials. And so I feel like I have to always talk about and talk about the motivation and very practical things, what we can do on food and farming, and at the same time become part of this broader democracy movement as well.
Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things that I think has been so compelling and brilliant about your work. It pushes us to think about how we can transform our own habits and attitudes and politics regarding food, while always keeping an eye on these larger structures, and how can we move towards, larger public policy change, structural change that actually, take the burden off of people feeling like, well, I have to just fix this myself. Because we know that can be overwhelming and demoralizing for people to feel like, that it's all on them. I lost my questions. Hold on a second. Because there was an important one that I wanted to ask you. Here we go. I spent the weekend reading the book or reading this latest edition. And you begin the America's experimental diet chapter in the book with the following quote: "To eat the typical American diet is to participate in the biggest experiment in human nutrition ever conducted. And the guinea pigs aren't faring so well." And, we know 50 years later, we have all the data to underscore that Americans aren't doing so well in regard to health outcomes. And, this is something I've been wanting to just kind of personally ask you, because I've always been one to push back as a chef, push back against a lot of the, I call them frankenfoods, the processed meat products, a lot of the industrial foods that the multinational food corporations market as healthful or vegetarian or vegan or whatever, labels that don't really have any legal definition they like to slap on them, more marketing tools. But, a question that I've been thinking a lot about lately is this, just thinking about this uptick in these frankenfoods, and a lot of them being produced by tech and food companies. And so I guess I'm just wondering, and I hate to be the killjoy in a lot of my friends and people. And, one of the criticisms I even get from my work is just like, they're too labor intensive, they're too time intensive, because I'm really encouraging people to have a whole foods approach and to make the time to, prepare meals from scratch. But, there is this moment where I go to places that used to have these really cool, interesting, house-made vegetarian and vegan burgers. And people don't have an incentive to create those things anymore because now we serve the Impossible Burger, or we serve, whatever, process kind of tech burger people are selling at the moment, whatever's in vogue. So I guess there's a part of me that wonders, are we entering a phase of a new kind of human experiment with diets, especially given that a lot of these products are poised to supplant animal products. They're producing fake beef and poultry and eggs. And so there's a part of me that concerns me. And I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on, the way in which these tech and food companies are presenting these food products as the panacea or as like the thing that's going to save us. But I'm a little skeptical.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm very skeptical because I think, one, we know that transparency is key. And many of these products have so many different things in them that most people never even heard of and can't imagine what the impact is in their bodies. But I think just the fact of processing, that means we're not getting the kind of fiber we need, and we're getting more and more hooked on just ultra processed foods. We're staying in that lane rather than, really shifting our enjoyment to the crunch and, to the, oh, what's going to happen if you throw that in there with that? And I just so encourage everyone here tonight to not think about this plant, and now I call it plant and planet-centered eating, as a burden, or you should. Think of it as an exploration, as a fun thing, as just something you can get your family and experimenting and try this and that, and oh, would that go together? And that's so freeing compared to just taking something and that somebody else all did this process for you, and you really don't know what you're getting. And so I think it's very empowering, and it can be absolutely fun to take on this delight of being, a sort of, just an inventor in the kitchen, that you can just play around, including with all the recipes in the new book. You don't have to take anything just as it is, but you can experiment yourself and have fun doing it.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that, because I think there's a way in which I found a lot of people get over obsessive about like the nutrients and the micronutrients, or, just getting everything right. And I always, encourage people to find joy in adopting these practices. Like there's joy. I feel like some of the most joyful moments that my family has is when we're going to the farmer's market. And so we're going to the farmer's market, we're connecting with people in the community, we're supporting local farmers, which helps bolster local and regional economies, and everything. Preaching to the choir, I'm sure, to everyone out there. But I was so excited to be invited to be a part of the kind of reboot for the recipes. And I'm just wondering, when did you decide that we need to do this? Let's give it a refresher. Let's pump it up. Let's bring in some new chefs to bring their viewpoints and perspectives. Because I'm glad you did, and I'm glad I was a part of it. But I was just wondering, why was that important to include in this updated version for you?
Well, I have to give a lot of credit to my daughter, Anna Lappe, because she is a visionary and she is an organizer, and she can really get her mom moving. So I really give her a lot of credit for the way she just envisioned and when she told me, she said, "Mom, do you realize there were 70 references to margarine in your original book?" I said, "Oh, I get it. There needs to be some 21st century attention to these recipes." And Wendy Lopez just did a brilliant job, and then all the chefs who came in, and I just feel like it's a whole new. It feels to me like a whole new book, and I'm really delighted with that. But I got to give Anna tons of credit.
Frankie, what's your secret? Because I feel like, you're in your 70s, and it seems like you don't stop. And You have such a robust body of work, and the thing is, it never seems like it's a burden or a chore. From the outside looking in, it seems like there's just so much joy and excitement that you bring to the work, and continuing to ask important questions, and pushing yourself and pushing the boundaries of how we all think about these different topics. So I'm wondering, like, how does that look for you? What motivates you to get out of the bed and continue fighting the good fight?
Well, to me, Brian, the good life is exactly that. It's someone that once said to me, and I just was so humbled by this and loved it so much. So I'll tell you all. She said, Frankie, you asked the question behind the question. And I said, oh, yeah, that's what I try to do. And I'm just sharing my joy. And I think I have to thank my parents who, I grew up in Fort Worth, Texas, very racist, very limited perspective. And they were seekers who integrated our church and during the McCarthy era and during the 50s while the city was segregated. So, but my parents were always learners. They were always asking the next question. And so if I could in any way, by saying that to everyone here tonight, just what are your questions? I had to get out of college before I knew that I had a question. And the first question that was really mine was, why is there hunger in the world? And that turned out to be a giant one. But I love that idea that we each can follow our questions, and then that question leads to another. And so that's what ultimately then led to really seeking the how do we envision an economic and political system that is truly democratic? Because we have to challenge not just a corporate funded lobbyist driven Congress and government, but also an economy that is driven by one rule: highest return to existing wealth. So it ends up with 3 billionaires who control more wealth than the bottom half of Americans. So that just can't work on any level. And so I just that you peel away the layers of the onion. Another metaphor I love, and then you have to see the interactions of it all, and get away from this. I'll share with you a beautiful comment by a now deceased German physicist who said to me, Frankie, in biological systems, there are no parts, only participants. No parts, only participants. And so that means that we look in one window, and then that takes us into another, and we open another. And so that we're everything is connected, and it's the opposite of the scarcity scare mindset, the quantitative. It's all about just quantities of separate things. No, it's all about relationships. Democracy and the world we want, whether it's relationships of, the plants in the soil or with each other, it's all about how do we align our relationships with our deepest needs. And beyond the physical, they are our need for power and for meaning and for community, for connection. And that's, to me, that's the definition of democracy. And so all of my work is trying to live out both here in where I'm now living in the Boston area, and our office in Cambridge, where we have a community of co-learners and we're asking questions together, but way on beyond that to how do we imagine an economy that is truly accountable to the users, us, and that where corporations are held accountable for the harm to our bodies that is happening when we've made our food has been turned into a health threat, and our fields are poisoning farmers. I mean, that we've got to have an economy that holds all of us accountable, as well as the government.
Yeah. Well, speaking of holding the government accountable, and this is a bit of a pivot away from Small Planet or Die for a Small Planet, and I know there's always the connections and intersections, but I just remember in 2005 when you published Democracy's Edge, and I was just took my level of thinking about just this experiment to a whole different place. And one thing that I've always appreciated about your work is that you really try to give people, action and help people feel like they are empowered and not just, powerless subjects. And, because of this historical moment, I think a lot of us are feeling helpless and wondering, as we kind of are anticipating, or I don't know, maybe we're hurtling towards fascism still. But, do you have any, because I feel like we'd be remiss if we didn't get some of your thoughts on this, just in this historical moment. Do you have any thoughts about how citizens can feel more empowered, and what action that we might be able to take to actually reel in this runaway democracy, or thin democracy, as you often describe it?
Very thin. Thank you, Bryant. Thank you, Bryant. Well, one practical tool that our Small Planet Institute has helped to create is a website, democracymovement.us, democracymovement.us. And there you can go right to your state. There's a map of the US. You go right to your state and see what kinds of reforms that you can get behind. And I really encourage you to meet at least one new buddy who's excited about that, of whatever else you're doing with your life, to put some of your energy into a real democracy in America. And I know in my life, what was life-changing is I participated in a march in 2016, right after Democracy's, not too long after Democracy's Edge. And it was life-changing. I marched from Philadelphia to Washington to sit in on the steps of the Capitol for exactly the reforms that are now being debated in Congress in terms of money out of politics and gerrymandering and voter rights and all of that. So, but it was life-changing. You know why? Because it was thrilling, and I met people who I would never meet in other walks, just in my neighborhood, just all walks of life. And I realized, oh, we all care about the same end. And then I'll just tell you, as we approached the Capitol, I had that aha moment where when it came into focus, I said, oh, right, those people in those buildings, they work for me, but I think it's that visceral to actually get in the street and make new friends and do what you thought you could not do, that is what is thrilling in life. And to know that it always comes back and connects to the very themes that we're talking about tonight, about how can we make food, instead of a health hazard, to be the joy and thriving it should be in everyone's life.
Yes. I think that's a great segue into something that I was thinking about. I read an interview you did with GQ today, and kind of piggyback on this thing around community and the people with whom we're building something new, something different, something that will, I hope, save us. In a recent interview, in response to the question, so how do you stay hopeful on a personal and spiritual level? And you responded, quote, "Goodness is not good enough right now. Just being a good person is not enough. What we need is courage. And how do we become more courageous? We've got to surround ourselves with people more courageous than we are and count on being emboldened by them." And so I'm wondering because I imagine you're probably the most inspiring person in many of the circles that you move in. And so I'm wondering, who is your circle? Who inspires you? Who pushes you to, keep it moving and catalyzes just the energy to make things happen?
Well, can I say my kids or my two children certainly inspire me because they're always pushing the edge. Both of them. My son Anthony is a documentary filmmaker, and he's doing something this spring very much related to our discussion. So they push me. They're risk takers, and I've really been blessed to connect with young people like Adam Eichen, who was on that march with me, and he's 49 years my junior, but we then connected, and he's really a risk taker. He's now executive director of Equal Citizens. And so Adam is always an inspiration to me. And I so believe in that idea that goodness is not good enough, courage is required. And we're so social. We humans are so social that, we need that push from people who are taking, the risk that maybe I can't do that, but if I am hanging out with them. And so I think that that's really key. But my other thought I really want to share is that I don't believe that human beings need a sense of certainty. We don't need to be optimists. We do not. I declare that all we need, we humans, is a sense of possibility that maybe our getting out in that demonstration, our contacting our legislators, our creating our own community, addressing hunger in our own neighborhood and our own community garden, all of these actions, all we need to know is it's possible that they could ripple out and make a difference. And so I say that I'm not an optimist, but I'm a possibilist. I believe that it is possible still to turn this very troubled planet, and now our food system decimating, so many species that the sixth grade extinction is now predicted. So, but I still believe that it's not too late on many, many fronts. And so that sense of possibility, I just want to encourage you is listening that you don't need to be an optimist and hanging out with courage is really helpful.
Yes. So I am going to pass it over to Paula in a second because I'm sure there are questions from the audience. But before we do that, I like to end interviews that I do with a kind of lightning round in which I throw out 5 words and then you just say whatever phrase or thought or whatever comes up for you. So are you into it? You down for this?
I guess so.
Okay. So first word, Silent Spring.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that. Because that book led, to the banning of DDT. And it set the stage and inspired me, a woman who was speaking out, when other scientists were not. And so thank you, Rachel Carson.
All right. Brown rice.
Oh, brown rice. I just had some. Again, this is, the way I cook. I threw brown rice and chopped carrots and onions into pot and made a soup, and it was really good. So brown rice, thank you. I always say when I go into an Indian restaurant, I said, do you serve brown rice? I'm pushing.
Yeah, and I was going to say, well, maybe it's just Northern California, but thankfully that's more of a standard thing that you see in restaurants.
Oh, good.
All right, next, Betty Valentine.
Oh my gosh, I'm going to start weeping. Betty Valentine, I did mention her, but she was one of the founders of paperback publishing in America. And she came out when she saw my manuscript, which accidentally, through a friend, got kind of in her hands. And she came out to California to meet me. And I was just awestruck. Betty Valentine, I'm sure she's going to walk out of the Durant Hotel in her high heels and dyed hair and makeup and everything. She walked out in flowered pants and sneakers and no dyed hair. I just fell for her. And she didn't give me any hard sell, but when she left me, I made her lunch out of the, my plant-centered lunch. And she said, Frankie, whoever publishes your book, I will buy it. And she was a dream. And so she's now passed, but I got to thank her. And she, I think she said, if you couldn't write the book, I just love your ideas. I'll do that if you can't do it. So she was taking a real chance on me. So thank you, Betty Valentine.
Beautiful. 2 more. Hope's Edge.
Oh, wow. Thank you. Hope's Edge, the title came from Anna Lappe, my daughter, and my co-author. Can you imagine, all you parents out there, the joy and the privilege of traveling the world, 5 continents at least we were on, traveling the world, meeting some of the most courageous social movement leaders anywhere, including Wangari Maathai, who went on to win the Nobel Peace Prize. We travel the world and we just tell stories about what we saw that was so inspiring. It was the landless workers movement in Brazil, for example. And it was, as I said, the Greenbelt movement in Kenya. And also there was the microcredit movement in Bangladesh. And we just told stories. And then we created this book, Hope's Edge. And then Anna said, why don't we call it Hope's Edge? Because they're pushing the edge of hope for the rest of us to walk. And it changed our lives, I think, because we found that these people who were facing the greatest odds They were often beaten and challenged and jailed for some of the things they were trying to do, and they just kept going. And so Anna and I learned that, wait a minute, they were the most, they had the most obstacles in their paths, but they were the most joyful people that we'd ever met. And so, whoa, that was life-changing, because they were doing what they believed in with others. They were meeting that need for power, meaning, and connection, and making the way for the rest of us. And so Anna and I we've often felt that changed our lives. And we did that traveling just when Anna was the age that I was when I wrote Diet for a Small Planet. So it was just magic, and it was one of my great gratitudes. Thank you.
Yeah, beautiful, groundbreaking, visionary book. Thank you for creating that. All right, last one.
Okay, I'm ready.
I think you're going to like this one. Democracy.
Oh. The first thing that came to mind was the preamble to our Constitution that says that our purpose is to promote the general welfare. What a concept. It's not to follow our own selfish interest in a marketplace. No. The purpose of this, we hope it's about democracy, that it is for the general welfare. And to me, that is the very premise of every democracy. But democracy at a deeper level is not an endpoint, but a journey. I quote the first African-American appellate judge, William Hastie, who said, "Democracy is not being, it is becoming. It is easily lost, but it is never finally won. Its essence is eternal struggle." But in the John Lewis spirit, it is that good trouble in terms of struggle. And it is life-giving. And it is the journey of humanity to fulfill ourselves. And that's what William Hastie captured for me in that beautiful quote.
Frankie, thank you so much. This has truly been a highlight of my year. And, I feel so lucky to be a part of giving you your flowers. I don't know if you've heard this phrase where people often talk about the way in which we will often celebrate these giants among us, these history makers after they've passed, and how we need to give people their flowers while they're here. And, it's just been so exciting seeing just from so many different sectors, people that I'm like, I had no idea you were such a fan of Frankie's work. People talking about, I had my dog-eared copy since the 1980s. And so I'm really excited to hear you, see you getting all your flowers. And I wish you nothing but the best of luck.
Thank you so much, Bryant. You're a gem. Thank you.
All right. Over to you, Paula.
Thank you so much, Brian. You guys are amazing together. Thank you so much. One of the best pairings ever for Book Passage. I stand in awe of both of you and what you've accomplished, but we do have a few customer questions, audience questions, and I'd like to get them in. One of the first is, do you recommend sections of the book, specific sections for engaging the very young people, like maybe kids? I don't know, they didn't say it specifically, but maybe they're referring to like kids.
That's interesting. I'd have to ask Anna, maybe, who's a lot more familiar. She has two young daughters, my granddaughters, and they help out a lot in the kitchen. And I wonder if Anna has anything to say to that.
Yeah, well, she'll be back on in a little bit, and if she remembers, she can definitely address.
Okay, that would be great, because I know my granddaughters are really into all this. So
good. Oh wow, how encouraging. Venus, who's in the audience, asked, "Are you working with poor people, the Poor People's Campaign?" I guess it would be, are you familiar with it? And
yes. I have written about it and been inspired and gone to talks in Boston, but I've been preoccupied with writing and more specific in terms of my activism, more specific democracy reforms, specific actions like that march. A few years ago, Democracy Spring, it was called. But I greatly admire it, and I'm so glad to be reminded. And I was so impressed when I heard Reverend Barber speak, and I just really want to. I'm so glad, that I was reminded, and now I'm going to go see what's happening in Boston. So thank you for that question.
Yeah. And let me see, we can probably take at least maybe one or two more. I know we're running out of time here. One of the contributors to the new edition of your book is Mark Bittman.
Mm-hmm.
And Mark Bittman at one point, and maybe still does, advocate encouraging people that even if you can't go complete vegetarian, if you can commit to 1 or 2 days a week, that really does, that's a good start, and it makes a difference environmentally as well as personal health benefits. And I was wondering, are you familiar with him kind of encouraging that? Do you agree with it?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think I do agree very much in the spirit of the way opens as we take one step and what feels right for us with that one step. And then, I know in my case, I just felt so much better when I shifted to a plant-centered diet. And I just stopped obsessing about calorie counting and all of that. And it was just so great. I never felt like I was making a sacrifice ever. And I just felt healthier and had more energy. So I would just say, experiment and don't feel burdened. Feel like the explorer, seeing what works for you. That's my attitude about it. And every step we take to align ourselves with the earth and with our bodies, and away from processed foods and away from foods that are chemically laden and wasteful, then that's a good thing. So every step counts.
Great. And lastly, this is coming actually from me. My hometown of Detroit, which is a predominantly Black community, until very recent years, did not even have a grocery store, let alone, I think there was one farmer's market once a week. And now that's changed over the years. But I'm just wondering, how there could be so many more communities, whether they're urban or poorer communities, diverse communities, country, whatever, that don't have access to healthy foods because they don't have certain types of grocery stores or they don't have farmers markets. How should we address that? How can we help with that?
Well, the ultimately we have to have a fair economy, and that involves profound democracy reforms that then tackle this mythology of a free quote unquote free market that concentrates wealth and deprives people of exactly what you're talking about. So ultimately, all those fronts are it's a system problem. And in the immediate thing, the only thing that comes to mind is that I was there in Detroit and went to a community garden downtown, but the where that is, to again reach out, find one or two other people who really want to eat a better diet, and see if there's some way that you could share, say, travel expenses to get someplace, or you could figure out, how to go to your city council, your town, meeting, and say, look, we are lacking even a basic grocery store. This has got to change. So start pressing politically, locally. But I would say both of those, find friends who really want that to make that change with you, and try to find some stopgap answers, maybe by taking turns, the cost of going in another neighborhood to get food. But bring other people into your life who really, really are just fed up with that deprivation, because this is just absolutely tragic that we have so many communities in which healthy food is not available.
Yeah. And I think as you were starting that, you were touching on also maybe get together with like-minded people that are concerned and start community gardens as well.
Yes, community gardens, absolutely. And they are have really taken off across the country.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm going to bring your daughter back on.
All right.
Anna?
Thanks, Paula. And thank you all for joining us. It's been fun to see your comments in the chat. And Bryant, thank you so much. I I loved sitting here listening to your conversations, and really thank you so much, Bryant, for being part of this special night. I wish all of my Bryant Terry cookbooks are in my kitchen, so I can't show them all to you, but I recommend, like I said, recommend them all. And thank you again for joining us. Here's the 50th anniversary edition. We really would love your support. If you want to buy a copy, you can find it in the link there. You can also find Bryant Terry's latest book, Black Food. I put a link into the chat if you want to get a copy of that book. Again, thank you so much, all of you, for joining. Thank you, Book Passage. We are doing this again with another friend, which I'm sure you will also find really inspiring. Our friend Raj Patel is joining my mother on September 30th, and you can go to dietforasmallplanet.org to find out more about that conversation. Raj is an incredible thinker and writer and has also a new book out that's fabulous called Inflamed. So I hope you can join us for that conversation. I want to just share again my incredible pride in the work of my mother. Mom, it's been such a joy for me to work on this book with you, and I'm so thrilled to see you getting this message out. I mean, it boggles my mind, right? 50 years, it's completely mind-blowing. So thank you, Frances Moore Lappé, for 50 years of incredible work. Thank you all for tuning in, and please continue to engage with us. I'm about to drop into the chat how you can find my mom online, on Twitter. You can find Bryant Terry on Instagram. We really want to hear from you, so please be in touch, and thanks for helping spread the word about the book. And Mom, if it's possible on the tech side, can we turn it over to just a final goodbye from my mom? And I think, Mom, if you can take it, final goodbye.
So, this is a delight. Thank you, Bryant. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Book Passage. And I just am filled with joy to be able to share this message with you. And thank you all.
Thanks and good night.